they bought in 1939, sort of as a retirement home, just before the Second World War, is where my father came and worked with them in 1951. His mother was the cousin of Del Hoheisen, and that's where the link comes in. And he basically, after the Second World War, had no father, and his mother needed him to work somewhere, and they offered that he could come to South Africa and work for them on the farm here. They actually just built the first tanks in the cellar in 1944. They were built by Italian prisoners of war, and the first wines were actually produced in the early 50s, just before my father arrived. And then he basically walked into a business where his far off uncle and aunt needed someone to help them, and he then arrived here. And they sort of, he says on his first day when he came here and he asked them what he should do, Hans told him, on this farm everybody finds their own job. And 80 years later we are proud to be a family wine business.
It's amazing how he became found his own job and then became the owner of the place eventually, right?
Well, he worked with Hans and Del until 1971 as an employee, and then at that stage he said to them, look, he wants to be a partner in the business. So 1971 officially the company Delheim Wines was grounded, and then the next 15 years he actually worked himself into 50% shareholding. And it was only in 2003, when Hans passed away, that we started buying out the other half of the portion, and only a year and a half ago that we finally have 100% ownership as the rest of the Sperling family to carry on the legacy that they started. But it's basically, I see it as one family because of the trend that, he was family of Del Hoheisen. So we celebrate it as a continuous family business.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. So for your 80-year celebration, did you guys do anything or plan anything special?
We've been to 50% shareholding.
To have some wonderful events,
and,
which we cancelled.
it was only in 2003 when Hans passed away that we started buying out the other half of the portion, and only the year was family of Del Hoheisen. So
in the meantime,
we celebrate it as a continuous family business.
Over the past 80 years.
That's amazing. So for your 80-year celebration, did you guys do anything or plan anything special?
And it's actually amazing how many wonderful stories
to
50% shareholding.
To have some wonderful events.
So it's been quite a journey to I've been looking through all our albums and history and write up a bit of how much they were part of the graveyard in South Africa, which he started in the early 70s. It was unheard of, So a lot of things that happen behind the scenes and stuff we just don't use to sell the wine with. It's just part of our history. It's what built us and we grew up in.
That's amazing. I mean, that part of Stellenbosch had such a history with, like you said, Marathi next to you, and the whole story of Lawrence Comfer and that old history as well. So that's all interesting. Social responsibility is really a core value at Delheim. Can you share some of your initiatives in this regard?
So we call ourselves a family wine business, more than just being the 6 family members that grew up and lived here. As a Sperling family, we have 15 other families who live on the property and still do. So we have, as I mentioned, a graveyard that was just part of what we thought was important for people to get buried where they were living. A creche for the kids to go to, an after school club for the kids who come back from school. So we try and just help on the education side. It's just something we do to empower people to take the next step forward. To me, it's more than just spending one day a year and going to paint a creche somewhere outside of our business. We continuously just try and work with the people that work with us to uplift them and look after their kids and their education. So yeah, that's, to me, is just what we do. I don't like to advertise it.
Well, yeah, like you say, it's a way of life, right?
Yeah, it's just how we grew up. And
So
then
that-
people always say, yeah, but you must tell people that. And I'm like, yeah, well. We maybe just the Wine Industry Ethical Trade Association, the VITA audit that we do. They specifically then also audit us in terms of the accommodation that the people live in, the health and safety standards, the labor legislation, everything that goes around people. So we've opted to just have an external audit done as well, so that we can actually say we are not just a member of VITA, but we are an externally audited member.
I think that's very important these days. You know, the world is so concerned about where things are coming from. To do it if you want to sell your products worldwide.
Yeah, it's, you know, we've often toyed with the idea of fair trade. Fair trade is a brand that the world understands in terms of what it means. But in our case, fair trade to me is a bit of window dressing. VITA to us is more substantial for our family business, and it works better in our business model. I think long term, it's just who we are. It's not trying to put a sticker on a label. So
I think it's so important, you know, that you actually are true to your core values rather than try to advertise it. It's so, because you're right. If you don't live it, it just becomes window dressing. And if you live something, you don't really feel like telling people about it because it's part of your identity. And
yeah,
it's
no,
amazing to hear that.
We once had a tour company who wanted to come and visit our creche with people, and I said to them, look, it's not visitable because it's not, I mean, education is something that is part of what we do. I'm not going to let tour groups go through our creche and have a look at what the kids are learning and how they're learning it, because to me that's not a tourist activity. It's just a basic activity. Yeah.
Totally agree with you. So other than social responsibility, you guys are also very much involved in conservation. And one of the things that you are involved with is you're a conservation champion for the World Wildlife Fund. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so in the year 2000, I don't know if you remember the big fires we had in the Cape. They were really bad. We basically burnt down the whole Simonsburg, burnt down in one night. And that fire jumped across from Kanonkop across the road onto our other property. It also burnt down the Klapmutskop, and in 2001 we had visitors walking up the Klapmutskop, and I got a phone call from this gentleman who said, but you realize that you've got some very unique fynbos up here? And I was like, we didn't realize what we had there because it was completely overgrown with pine trees and blue gum. Wow. Then we had the luck that Elsenburg College, which is next door to us there on the